When Mark Wahlberg strolled onto the set of The View, he expected smiles, soft questions, and a bit of banter to plug his latest film. What he got instead was a televised ambush. Joy Behar, never one to hold back, locked eyes with him like a lion sizing up its prey, and from that very first glance, Mark sensed something was off. He wasn't here to promote a movie. He was walking straight into a war zone before cameras even finished rolling. What should have been a standard sit-down had spiraled into a raw, unscripted clash. Not over film, not over fame, but values, identity, and the fine line between conviction and cruelty. It was personal, and it was live. This wasn't your average celebrity interview. It was a full-blown collision between Hollywood bravado and daytime, television's sharpest tongue, and neither of them planned to back down. Before we dive in, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more celebrity showdowns, and drop a comment below. Do you think Mark was unfairly ambushed, or was this just karma catching up? Mark Wahlberg stepped onto the soundstage, adjusting the cuffs of his jacket as the studio lights hit him. The applause that greeted him was warm, almost too warm, like a welcome that didn't quite match the undercurrent in the room. He flashed that trademark Wahlberg grin to the audience, but his eyes quickly caught something else. A look on Joy Behar's face that didn't sit right. She smiled, sure, but it wasn't friendly. It was calculated. Mark had done the media circuit 1,000 times. He'd faced tough questions, hostile interviewers, even political firestorms. But there was something in the way Joy leaned forward in her chair, fingers steepled, voice poised, that told him this wasn't going to be the puff piece his publicist had pitched. "Welcome back to The View," Joy began, her voice razor beneath a sugary tone. "Today we're joined by none other than Mark Wahlberg. And I have to say, I've been waiting for this chat for quite some time." Mark took his seat with practiced ease, that unmistakable Boston confidence pouring out in every word. "Thanks, Joy. Always a pleasure being here with you ladies." "Oh, is it really?" she fired back, the corner of her mouth curling into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Because if memory serves, you've had some pretty strong opinions about folks in my profession." The mood in the room shifted. Audience members exchanged glances. What had started as a typical celebrity sit-down had already taken a turn. Mark's smile tightened. He'd heard this tone before, the kind people used when they were laying bait. "I think maybe you're misreading that, Joy," he said coolly. "I've always respected people's right to speak their minds." Joy raised her eyebrows and shuffled her cue cards with theatrical flair. "Oh, I'm not misreading anything. I've got the quote right here. You said, and I quote, 'Some of these Hollywood types need to stick to what they know instead of lecturing working-class Americans about politics.' Sound familiar?" Mark leaned forward slightly, calm, controlled, but unmistakably tense. "That wasn't aimed at anyone in particular," he replied. "And yeah, I stand by it. There's a big difference between sharing an opinion and talking down to people." Joy's expression turned icy. "Talking down to people," she repeated, her tone laced with mock concern. Interesting coming from someone who spent his entire career playing tough guys with a chip on their shoulder. "So tell me, Mark, when did you become the voice of working-class America?" The studio airdropped 10 degrees. Whoopi Goldberg, seated nearby, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The other co-hosts glanced at each other, unsure whether to step in or let it ride. Mark's jaw flexed. His Boston accent deepened, always a tell when the temperature in his blood started to rise. "I never said I was the voice of anyone," he shot back. "But I grew up in Dorchester. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it feels like to work 2 or 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. I didn't grow up making jokes about other people's problems." Joy's eyes flashed. She wasn't backing down Dorchester. "That's cute," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "But let me tell you something. I've been in this business longer than you've been a household name. I've earned the right to speak my mind and to call out hypocrisy when I see it." Mark didn't flinch. "You sit here every day making millions, telling people how they should live, how they should vote, while half the people you're lecturing are just trying to keep their heads above water." The room had gone completely silent. The audience, the crew, even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Whoopi leaned in, voice tentative. "Maybe we should cut to a break," but Joy raised a hand to silence her. "No, I want to hear this," she said, reclining in her chair with an unnerving calm. "Please, Mark, enlighten us. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Should we just stick to entertainment fluff? Should we pretend the world doesn't exist? Maybe talk about your new action movie without asking any meaningful questions?" Mark's fists were clenched now, resting on the table. "You're twisting this, Joy. You're not interested in a real conversation. You're interested in scoring points. You're interested in making me look bad, not because you disagree with me, but because you don't like who I am." "Joy." leaned in, the fake smile now long gone. What you said was ignorant, and I'm not going to let you hide behind a working-class badge just because it's convenient. You want to talk about hard times. I grew up in Brooklyn. My father drove a truck for 40 years, so don't talk to me about struggle. Mark's voice began to rise, the edge in it unmistakable. Then why do you act like you're above everyone else? Why do you mock people who don't think like you do, like they're less than? Joy laughed, short and sharp. You mean your kind of people. The kind that got arrested over and over again. The kind that ended up committing hate crimes and getting a free pass because they turned out to be famous. The line landed like a slap. The crowd froze. Mark's face drained of color, then flushed red with fury. That's low, he said, voice trembling with restraint. Even for you. Joy didn't blink. Is it? Because if we're talking about values, maybe we ought to talk about your real past. Not the polished version you sell in interviews, the real one. Mark stood suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the studio floor. This is exactly the problem. You can't handle disagreement. You don't want a debate. You want a takedown. Joy's tone turned cold. Sit down, Mark, we're not finished. Oh, we are, he snapped, still standing. This stopped being a conversation the moment you decided to drag it through the mud. The camera didn't cut away. The control room stayed frozen. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. But what Joy said next, that was the moment everything unraveled. And just when it seemed like it couldn't get any worse. ... Joy crossed a line even live television couldn't erase. Joy folded her arms, her expression smug. Oh, so now you're walking out? She said, raising her voice just enough to needle him. That's real mature, Mark. Very. Working-class hero of you. Mark's fists tightened at his sides. His voice, when it came, was low and deliberate. I'm not walking out because I can't handle the conversation. I'm walking out because this. He gestured around the set, isn't a conversation, it's a performance. And I'm not here to be your punching bag. Joy scoffed. A performance? You're the actor, sweetheart. Don't call me that, Mark snapped, his tone sharp as glass. You're not being clever, Joy. You're being cruel. A brief silence rippled through the studio. Even Joy seemed momentarily thrown. Then she leaned in again. Cruel. You think this is cruel? Because I haven't even started yet. Mark didn't flinch. That's the problem. You think cruelty is power? Joy's cheeks flushed. You know what's powerful? Telling the truth. And the truth is, you've spent your whole career pretending to be someone you're not. You're not some blue-collar champion. You're a millionaire tough guy playing dress-up. Mark leaned across the table, every syllable laced with fury. You sit in that chair every day, acting like you're above it all. But you're not. You use your platform to tear people down who don't fall in line with your views. And when they push back, you call them dangerous. Joy's laugh echoed through the studio, but this time it didn't carry the confidence it had before. Dangerous. The only dangerous thing here is the idea that someone like you thinks they can dodge their past? Mark shook his head. There it is. You can't argue the present, so you drag up the past. That's your go-to move, right? If someone doesn't agree with you, discredit them, humiliate them, dig up old wounds. But guess what? That doesn't make you strong, Joy. It makes you small. Joy stood up now, mimicking the move Mark had made earlier. Her voice quivered with rage. Small. You think I'm small? I've spent my life fighting for causes bigger than myself. For people who don't get a voice, what have you done? Starred in another shoot, emu flick, and cashed a check. Mark straightened, stepping slightly closer. Never aggressive, but steady, resolute. You want to know what I've done? I've built something out of nothing. I've owned my past. And I've used my platform to talk with people, not at them. Joy rolled her eyes. Oh, please, save it for the press tour. The only thing you've built is a brand based on being a reformed bad boy. It's convenient, isn't it? You get to be gritty without ever being held accountable. Mark's voice lowered again, the kind of calm that's more unsettling than a shout. If I didn't take accountability, I wouldn't be here right now. But I also won't let someone like you weaponize my past to score applause. Joy raised a brow. Applause? You think that's what I want, isn't it? He said. You didn't invite me here for a dialogue. You invited me for a spectacle. Joy stared him down. You're a guest on my show, and if you can't handle tough questions, maybe you should stick to reading scripts. Mark's laugh came without humor. You think this is journalism? You think ambushing someone with gotcha quotes and half-truths is brave? You're not a journalist, Joy. You're a performer too. Only difference is, I admit it. Joy's jaw tightened. Get out. Mark blinked. What? I said get out, she repeated, louder this time. You don't get to stand there and insult me on my own set. Mark stared at her for a beat. Then he shook his head slowly. You ambushed me. You turned a promotional visit into a witch hunt. And now that I won't let you control the narrative, you're throwing me off the stage." Joy pointed toward the studio doors. Security. The guards, clearly unsure what to do, hesitated at the edge of the set. Mark wasn't yelling. He wasn't out of control. He was just ... Done. It's okay, he said, holding up a hand. I'll go, but not because you told me to, because I know what I'm worth. And I won't waste another second in a place where decency gets drowned out by ego. He turned toward the exit, but paused halfway there. "You know what the saddest part is?" he asked, loud enough for the entire studio to hear. "You had a chance today. A real chance to bridge a gap, to prove that people with different views could still find common ground. But instead, you proved every single thing people already believe about you." The room was still as stone. Joy's face had gone pale beneath the lights, and just when it felt like things couldn't escalate any further, she said the one thing that ended it all. Joy folded her arms and tilted her head, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth, slow and venomous. Then came the words that would echo far beyond the studio walls. "You know what, Mark?" she said, voice laced with derision. "Maybe. It's time you went back to that little Boston neighborhood you're always bragging about. Let the grown-ups handle the real conversations." The entire set froze. Mark stopped in his tracks. His shoulders rose slightly, just enough to betray the impact. Slowly he turned around, his eyes fixed on her. "My little Boston neighborhood," he repeated, voice dangerously soft. "You mean the place where real people live? Where folks don't get paid to sit in a chair and belittle half the country?" Joy snorted. "Oh, give me a break. Honest jobs." "Like what? Drug dealing? Assault? That was your resume before Hollywood gave you a makeover, wasn't it?" Gasps rippled through the audience. You could almost hear hearts drop. "That was it." Mark took a deliberate step forward. Not aggressive, but commanding enough that 3 security guards subtly inched closer. He raised both hands in a calming gesture. Not for Joy, but for the audience, for the world watching. "You really want to go there?" he asked, voice like steel. "Because I can?" "Believe me, I can." Joy crossed her arms tighter. "You don't scare me." "I'm not trying to," Mark replied. "But I am going to respond." He took another step toward the edge of the set. "You want to bring up my past? Fine. Let's talk about yours. Let's talk about how you never made it as a stand-up. How your comedy career fizzled out, and you pivoted into political pot-stirring because that's where the attention was." Joy blinked, not just stunned, but visibly rattled. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but I do," Mark said, that Boston edge slipping fully into his tone now. "You spent decades trying to be funny. It didn't work. So now, you play the villain because being angry gets ratings. Tearing people down gets headlines. You're not challenging the system, Joy. You're exploiting it." Joy's voice cracked slightly. "You're just bitter because I challenged you." Mark shook his head. "No, I'm disappointed. You had a real opportunity here to challenge ideas, but instead you went for character assassination." He pointed at her. "You brought me on this show under false pretenses. You lured me in with the promise of promoting a film, and then you turned it into a personal attack. That's not journalism. That's not even daytime drama. That's cowardice." Joy's face was red now, a mix of rage and humiliation. "You think I'm the coward?" she hissed. "You think I'm the one hiding something?" Mark nodded. "Yeah, because strong people don't ambush their guests and throw tantrums when they push back. You didn't just lose your temper today, Joy. You lost your credibility." The audience was still holding their breath. Some were filming with their phones now, sensing history in the making. "Get out," Joy said again, her voice brittle. Mark didn't move. He just tilted his head slightly. "You know what's ironic?" he asked, voice almost amused. "You've spent your entire career calling out bullies, but today you became one. You tried to corner me, embarrass me, define me by the worst chapters of my life, and when I didn't crumble, you called security." Joy's hands trembled. "I called them because you don't belong here." "No," Mark corrected. "You called them because you lost control." The room was silent. Even the co-hosts, normally eager to step in, had fallen completely quiet. Spectators in a train wreck, too massive to stop. And then, finally, Joy made her last mistake. "I've done more for progress in 1 year than you've done in your whole life," she spat. "I use my voice to make the world better. What do you use yours for? Selling protein shakes and punching people on screen." Mark's smile was cold. "You know what I use my voice for? Joy. To speak with people, not at them. To listen, to connect. To admit when I'm wrong and try to do better. Something you clearly gave up on a long time ago." Joy's mouth opened, but no words came. "You're not fighting for progress," Mark said, his voice calm now. You're fighting to stay relevant. And this? All of this? He motioned to the cameras, the stage, the audience. This is what desperation looks like. And with that, the balance of power shifted, and Joy Behar realized she'd lost more than just control of the conversation. Mark stepped back from the table, but his presence still filled the room. The control booth was in chaos, producers gesturing wildly behind the glass, but no one dared cut the feed. Not yet, because everyone watching in the studio and at home knew they were witnessing a moment no script could ever recreate. Whoopi Goldberg finally broke the silence, her voice low, pleading. Maybe we should all just take a breath, yeah? But neither of them moved. Joy's knuckles were white. As she gripped the edge of her chair, her voice wavered now, not from nerves but from realization. You don't get to come on my show and talk to me like that. Mark's reply was immediate. You brought me here to be a prop, to tear me down in front of your audience so you could feel powerful. And when it didn't go your way, you tried to rewrite the rules. That's not how this works. Joy tried to stand taller, to reclaim the presence she'd just lost. I asked questions. That's my job. No, Mark said flatly. A journalist asks to understand. You ask to accuse. There's a difference. The audience remained frozen in their seats, faces reflecting a mix of shock, discomfort, and awe. Some of them weren't even sure who they agreed with anymore, but they all knew one thing. This wasn't just a heated exchange. This was the unraveling of something bigger. Joy pointed toward the exit one last time. Leave. Mark paused, looked around, then took one last breath. I'll go, he said quietly, but I'm walking out with my integrity intact. Can you say the same? He turned and walked toward the back of the set, slow, steady, unapologetic. The camera followed him the entire way. No cutaway, no fade to commercial, just the quiet, surreal image of a man exiting a stage that had tried to humiliate him, and failed. But just before he disappeared through the doorway, Mark stopped. He turned back. Not for drama, not for applause, but for something far more real. You had a chance today, he said, his voice echoing across the silent set. You could have used this moment to bridge a gap, to show people that we don't have to agree, to still treat each other with respect. But instead, you doubled down on the very thing you claimed to stand against. Division. He nodded once, not to Joy but to the audience. Just remember who walked away and who couldn't. And with that, he left. Joy stood motionless, her expression unreadable. Around her, the silence stretched into eternity. No one moved. No one clapped. Even the stage lights seemed dimmer, as if they too understood something profound had just taken place. Whoopi finally broke the moment. We'll be right back after this commercial, but her voice was hollow. Everyone knew there was no coming back from what had just happened. The confrontation was over, but the fallout was just beginning. Within minutes, social media erupted. Clips from the broadcast circulated like wildfire. Headlines screamed across every platform. Analysts dissected every word, every expression, every pause, and through it all, one truth stood out. Joy Behar hadn't just lost an argument. She'd lost her grip on her audience, on her reputation, on her place as the sharp-tongued voice of daytime TV. Mark Wahlberg had come to promote a film. He left as something else entirely. A man who refused to be cornered, who stood firm in the face of hostility, and who walked out not with a bruised ego, but with something far rarer in show business, dignity. Joy, on the other hand, had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She had pushed too far, said too much, and revealed more about herself than any monologue or soundbite ever could. The mask of righteous outrage had cracked. And what lay beneath was something far less admirable. The episode would become one of the most talked about moments in television history. Not for what was said, but for what it exposed. About power. About pride. About the limits of provocation. And every time someone rewatched that clip, every time a new viewer stumbled upon the footage, one question would echo louder than any applause. Who was really the bully, and who walked away the bigger person?